to every week. And eventually I decided in the month of October to write once a day, every day. And I thought, it's just going to be a thing for 30 days, and then we'll be done, right? I don't even know if I have 30 things to say. We'll figure this out. If you know me, you know that it's never been a problem to find 30 things to say. But I thought, we'll try this out. And my blog traffic at that time, a good day meant 50 people came to the website. How many of you, 50 people visiting your site on any given day would be a good day? Right? How many of you would be like a spectacular day? Right? Yeah. So that's the way I was. I was like, I would write the post, I'd publish it, and I would post it on Facebook or Twitter, and I'd let the world know it was there. And the first person who came to my blog, the first person who liked it on Facebook every time was always the same. My mom. My mom to this day, if you follow me on Facebook, you'll notice that she's retired, so all she does is she sits at home with her iPad and she waits for me to post something so she can be the first person to click like, right? She just wants to love her son, and so she's like. At one point, people thought Christina Lemma was my wife, and I'm like, no, that's my mom, right? Like, she's just, because they're just like, I see this Lemma and she just likes everything you do. That's my mom. So I knew that the first person that was going to visit the website was going to be my mom. That's great. Okay, but could I get 49 other people to come read this post, right? And one day, I got 100 people to come to the website, right? I didn't do anything, right? Some combination of Facebook, Twitter, Google, some friend telling someone else. 100 people came. And so if you've ever had a Google Analytics chart that has a spike, right, you know what I was feeling. Did this just die? Yes. Okay. Hello? How many of you have ever had a spike? Right? Google Analytics spike. It goes like this, and then whoop, it goes up, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I did what any of you would have done. I called my wife into the room. Right? I showed her the screen, and I'm like, look, because it was a clear spike, right? 50, 50, 50, 50, 100, right? I think it wasn't even perfect 100, it was like 105. I'm like, come here, look. And I had to explain, this is the normal day's views, this is today's views, right? Big deal. Her response was, don't worry, it'll go back down. It's important, right, to be grounded, and my wife is the one that does that for me. She's constantly letting me know that, you're not that big a deal. Don't worry about it. So I watched as this number slowly over time grew, right? And for 3 years, it turns out, not just for 30 days, but for 3 years, I wrote every single day. Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, and then Sunday, every day. And even though WordPress has a feature where you can write a post in advance and then schedule it so that it publishes later, I didn't use that feature. So I just wrote the discipline of sitting down and writing every day. I did that for 3 years. The last 2 years, I've written somewhere between 3 to 5 times in a week, and sometimes as low as 1 time in a week. So the last 2 years I've been fairly busy, and at some point I'll start again writing far more regularly. But what I thought I'd do this morning is kind of walk you through what I learned about myself. When we're talking about discovery as an overall theme here, what did I learn, and what could I share with you so that you don't have to learn it on your own, or so that at least you're prepared as you start thinking about writing more regularly. Now, how many of you write every single day, 7 days a week, right now, and have done so for several weeks, months, and or years? Right? There's always 1 or 2 people in the crowd, and the rest of you are like, they're insane. I get it, right? I get it. And I'm not going to tell you that you have to do that, right? I'm not going to tell you that you have to do it. But I am going to highlight some of what happened for me, and it's just one story. And I want to be very, very, very clear. Anyone who gets on any stage and speaks to a crowd of people and tells them, if you do what I do, you'll have the same results I do, they're lying. Right? It's a moment in time. I started writing about one set of topics at one moment in time to one kind of community, and then I had some consequences. If you start doing the exact same thing, writing the same exact articles at this moment in time to a different kind of community, it may be different. So results may vary, but that doesn't mean that my journey isn't my journey. So I wanted to walk it through in case it helps you. Does that make sense? We good? All right. So 5 things you're going to discover if you start blogging consistently. Right? The easiest thing that you're going to get is visitors. That seriously is the easiest thing. There's a lot more things that are harder. But the first thing you're going to get is visitors. And you're going to discover something, I hope, that I wasn't prepared for. See, when I started the 30 days of writing, I was in a little group of people where we all said we're going to write. And so each of us were holding each other accountable to writing every day. And so I was more writing for me and for them than I was writing for an audience. Right? Because I just wanted to be accountable, so I got to make sure I get my thing done today. Whether I do it perfectly, whether lots of people come, was immaterial to, I just need to check the box because I said I was going to do it. I'll write the best I can, but I'm just going to do it and get done. And what I didn't realize was these weren't page views. These were people. I was in Los Angeles 2 years after I started writing. And it was a little bit comical because I have a friend of mine who's taller than me, broader than me, and a shy bit better looking than me. And he came up to me and said, I got to tell you the best story. I'm like, what? He goes, guy walks up to me, starts telling me how he used to live in his car, started reading my blog, totally changed his life. Now he got his own apartment. Him and his daughter live there. It's great. He asked if he could give me a hug. I'm like, I don't understand the story, and I definitely don't understand why you're telling me the story. Oh, because when he was done, I tipped my glasses down, I looked at him, and I said, Chris Lemma. Because I knew he was talking about you, not me. And I'm like, wait. You can't be me. I'm me. He's like, it's okay. After that, and he gave me the hug, which was a bit too long, I sent him your way, so he's going to come find you. And lo and behold, later that day, a gentleman about 45, 55 years old walked up to me, and he said, I want to tell you my story. I was writing some software. My company, the company I work for, fired me. My wife had just divorced me. She took my daughter. I didn't have a job, so I couldn't get parental visits with my daughter, and I ended up living in my car. And I started reading your posts, and the ones that helped me start up my freelance business were great. The ones that helped me price were great. And within 6 months, I was making enough to get into an apartment, and now my daughter lives with me half-time. Nothing prepares you for that because you've been sitting here looking at Google, right? And you're like, look, a spike, right? You're thinking page views. And the reality is when you start writing is they're not page views, they're people. And the people that are reading your content can have a change. There can be a transformation by what you write. So every time I sit down and write, I don't think about the page views. Every time I sit down and write, I think about how can the story I tell now have an impact, a change, create enough courage through words that someone will take action. My job is not to be the smartest person on my site. I have friends who say, Chris, you write all the time. You should write less, write deeper, so that people know how smart you are. That is not my goal on my website. My goal is not to be the hero of my own story. The goal when I write is to transform the life of the reader, not to transform my own. We'll get to how mine's changed, but my goal is to give you enough courage to act. Whether it's, I don't know which thing to buy, and I'm not sure, and I don't want to waste my money, let me help you figure out the right one. Oh, I don't know if I can do this on my own, let me give you the steps to do it. I don't know if I'm qualified to give them this price, let me show you how to do this right. My job is to give you the courage to act. And that's when you realize the world is filled with visitors who want that. The world is not filled with visitors who want to read a rant. How many of you are married? Okay, so I want to talk to you for just a second. There's this weird dynamic in a marriage, right? It doesn't happen the first few weeks of marriage, but it definitely happens after you've been in it for about a year or two. You get to this moment in the evening, somewhere between 4 and 6, and there's this terrible conversation that happens far more regularly than any of us want to admit. What do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner? Well, make a choice. I don't care. Anywhere. Anywhere? Okay, what about McDonald's? No, not McDonald's. Oh my God, you just said anywhere, and now it can't be anywhere. You meant to say anywhere but McDonald's. Okay, what about Chick-fil-A? No, not Chick-fil-A. Okay, it's clear you have an opinion. You have an opinion. You've been holding it back. Tell me where you want to eat. It happens in every marriage. If you're still young in that relationship, just wait for it. You know what's never happened? No one in the midst of that conversation has ever gone to Google and done a search and said, please give me a long rant about Chick-fil-A, or a long rant about McDonald's, or a long rant about Wendy's, or a long rant about Olive Garden. No one's ever requested long rant for anything. And yet, what happens? We go to a restaurant, we have a horrible experience, and we're like, I'm going to blog about that. Nobody wants it. Nobody's looking for it. Right? If you want to write a post that says the best 5 restaurants in Sacramento where there's no line, oh, that's interesting. Because I want to know where, hey, 5 restaurants you don't even know exist because they just showed up in the last 6 weeks. You're like, I want to know that list. But long rant about something no one wanted. And so what happens is you learn to write for people, not for page views. And then you'll discover the world is filled with those kind of visitors. The world is filled. You will not get enough of the people who share your post to someone else and who share you as a resource, and people want to come visit. Visitors are the easiest things. But as you hear their story, as they write in the comments, as they send you comment forms, all of a sudden you discover, wow, you just gave me enough courage to write the next post. Right? If my job was to write to give you courage to act, when the audience reads, when a visitor reads and gives you back their story of how you transformed their life, they give you courage to write the next day. Does that make sense? All right, let's go on to the next one. Values. You probably know this, but you probably have a whole bunch of values that have never been tested. Those are not your values. Right? Oh, I like to be generous to people and give someone a handout when they're struggling. Give them a hand to lift them up out of poverty. Have you ever actually tried to help someone get out of poverty? Right? When all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm going to have to go to a doctor's appointment. I'm going to have to put them in my car and take them to a doctor's appointment to help them get on AFTC. And you're like, I have to go sit in a doctor's office for hours. And you realize, I don't really want to do this. I just want to be the kind of person who thinks they'd like to do it. But I don't want to do it. Values are only values when you put them to the test. When it's hard. And one of the things that happens when you start writing is that you have to decide when you're going to use your voice, when you're going to say something, or when you're going to let something just go right by. When you're going to stand up for something, or when you're going to just say, I don't want to get involved in the drama. Several years ago, a company that now has been purchased by Automatic, but at the time was a company called Woo Themes, made a change to their pricing. And everybody was upset about it. And I decided, I'm not upset about it. Actually, what they're doing makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to write a post that says, their pricing makes a lot of sense, and most of you that are giving them pricing advice don't know what you're talking about. And not in a bad way, but look, here's the math. Here's the logistics of how they have to change their pricing. And so I wrote the post. And that was the first bit, right? Because you have to decide, do I want to stand out? Do I want to speak about something when no one else is talking about it, or when I know I'm not sharing a popular opinion? But the next part is the trolls that come out. If you don't know what a troll is, right, then you should pat yourself on the back for living a wonderful life. You've done something right in this world. Because the rest of us deal with these folks all the time. Even when you don't want to. right? Even when you think, I'm just going to ignore the trolls, because that's what they tell you. The word out on the street is, don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls means, don't comment back. Don't give them fuel for their fire. And yet, I fall for it all the time, because they write something stupid, to which I have to respond and say, no, that's stupid. Let me explain further what I meant, because clearly you're a smart person who didn't understand me because it was my fault that I didn't articulate it well, to which they respond with more trolling, and you're like, ah! I just fed a troll. So you start doing things. You start learning things about what's important. For example, any of you, and I mean this, any of you could come to my house. You could come in, I would let you in. Some of you, if you've been to my house before, you know that we have a little keypad, and you punch in a code, and you can open the door and go straight in. And I think by now we have about 2,000 people that know the code. Any of them can come to our house. They can come right on in. It's mostly because I'm lazy, right? Like if I'm sitting in my comfortable chair watching my show, and you come out to the door and I know you, and you ring the doorbell, right? I'm like, oh my God, now I got to get up. If I get all the way to the door, and I open the door, and it's one of my friends, I'll give them the code. Never ask me to get up from my comfy couch again, right? Because I'm lazy. But people have the code. If you come to my house, I'll let you in. If you come into my kitchen, I will give you food. I will let you open up my fridge and grab anything you want out of there. What I will not let you do is grab spray paint, walk out to the front of my house, and start painting on my garage door. It's my house. You don't get to do that. When you come to my website, you can read any post you want. You can comment on any post. But if you start acting maliciously, my values kick in. It took me 2 years to realize that the delete button next to a comment worked anytime I wanted it to. I was scared, right? I was scared like, oh God, he's censoring his boss. It's my house! And I can delete any comment I want because of my values. I'm sorry, you used a word I didn't like. Delete. I'm sorry, you were pitching your own product without reading my post. Delete. I'm sorry, you're being rude to someone else. Delete. That delete button works all the time. And my values dictate what I care about. And after I started deleting them, I got kind of excited about doing this. I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Because the conversations then look a little disjointed, right? Because you let someone say, well, I was replying to whatever, but the whatever you deleted because you're like, no, that's rude, delete. And they're like, you're like, I don't care. I don't care. It's my house. You don't spray paint on my walls. And so you learn, right, over time, how you're going to deal with trolls, right? The other thing you get if you start writing a lot is, it turns out, unbeknownst to me, right, this thing called PageRank, which may or may not even be a thing anymore, right? But there's a ranking of how valuable your website is. The more you write, the more Google thinks that your website is valuable, and therefore, all sorts of people show up offering you stuff for free. Oh my God, we have great articles written for you for free, right? And you're like, why would they want to write an article, right, and put it on my site? And then you read some of these articles, and there's backlinks to other things and affiliate links to their own stuff. And they're like, no, I just want to borrow your audience. No, thank you. Right? I created that audience. You don't get them. Right? But some people show up with very lucrative offers. If you would just put this one link on this post, we'll pay you $1,000 a month. And you go, I don't even read that post anymore. I don't go back and look at it. What do I care? And you have to decide, what are my values about this? What am I willing to link to and what am I not willing to link to? What am I willing to be paid for and what am I not willing to be paid for? And there is no right or wrong answer, right? Because it might be something that is legitimately good and you're like, yeah, I'll backlink to that. And other things that you're like, no way, ever. But it's driven by your values. And sometimes you just don't realize what you're going to care about until you get there, right? And so you're going to have to deal with it, though, because today I get, in terms of offers for articles posted on my site, I probably get 50 proposals a week. In terms of offers to get paid for ad space or backlinks, I probably get another 25 per week. And in terms of comments that I delete because they're troll-ish, it's probably on the order of 50 a day. So, yay. Right? You're like, that's not what I thought I'd be learning about when I started writing. But you realize if you don't manage the content on your own site, right? If you don't manage that content, and if you don't do it in line with your values, your site becomes a lot less useful, and people stop coming because either it's a bunch of ads or it's a bunch of backlinks to things that they click on once and they go there and they're like, this is horrible, why would I ever go to this again? And you start losing trust. Does that make sense? Most people will tell you that if you start writing regularly, you'll find your voice. I will tell you that's the third thing I found. I will tell you that it took a long time to find my voice. Right? I am a public speaker first. I am a blogger like 18th. That wasn't any skill of mine that I showed up with saying, I know how to do this. I know how to tell a story to an audience. I didn't necessarily know how to do it on the blog. And I didn't know what my way was going to be. But about a year and a half into it, I realized, hey, the same stuff I do when I speak to a crowd is what I'm going to do on my blog. That's going to be my shtick. So I will tell you stories. Even when I'm trying to get you to look at a product and get you the courage to say this is the right product, it'll start with a story. Right? Even if I'm trying to give you a tutorial about why you want to do something and show you the steps, it'll probably start with a story. Because that's me. That's the way I work. But it took a while to find my voice. And what most people don't tell you is you start by copying others. Right? I don't know, how many of you like to sing in the car or the shower? It's okay, there's a safe place. They're only recording me. They don't even see your hands, right? And what happens when you start singing that song, right? You try and sound like the person singing the song. But that's not your voice. Then you sing another song that's from another person and you sound like them. And then you sing another song by another person and you sound like them. And how long does it take before you decide to sing a song with your own voice? How many of you hate the sound of your own voice? Right? I'll tell you, in college, it didn't matter who I was dating. They always did my answering machine. Because I hated my voice. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear my voice on the telephone machine. It turns out there's an ancillary byproduct to that, which is everyone knows when you start changing girlfriends because your answering machine changes all the time. Thank God we don't have answering machines anymore. But I didn't like my voice. Right? And part of what happens when you write is that you realize I'm copying someone else because I saw their shtick or I thought that's the way it's supposed to be. Right? It turns out when I speak, I say the word right a lot. It's one of the ways that I engage you. It's one of the ways I watch your eyes to see if you're with me, if you're tracking. And so I say, this is how this works, right? And when I started writing and I wrote right, someone said, why do you ask that all the time? I'm like, that's the way I speak. And I had people going, no, I wouldn't do that. Or, hey, this is misspelled. Or, hey, you capitalized this wrong. And finally, I just went, delete. It's my voice. This is the way I work. Right? You don't have to like it. Go write your own. But what people started saying when they read the posts and they heard me in public somewhere or they watched a YouTube video was, oh my gosh, when I read your post, I hear your voice in my head. Now, sometimes hearing my voice in your head is a very bad thing. But in the case of reading a post and you hear me and I'm talking to you the exact same way, as if we were sitting right there close to each other just talking across a coffee table at a Starbucks, that's what I want. And so I write the way I speak. I also discovered, in terms of values and voice, I have 1,200, 1,300 posts. Almost all of them are positive. 6 are negative. Right? Those 6 are public service announcements. I felt it's important enough that I'm going to say something. Other than those 6, if it's negative, I just don't write about it. I just focus on the stuff that's positive. That's my particular event. You might want to write a whole bunch of negative posts. That's up to you. My voice, I found through writing often enough, was with stories, was with conversational tone, and positive. Does that make sense? It turns out you discover value as you do this a lot, right? Because what happens is you write a lot, and then you say, hey, by the way, and this happened unbeknownst to me, one day I wrote a post and said, go check out this product that I think is really great, right? And they made $25,000 extra that day. And they're like, can you write about us every day? I said, no, that would get very boring on my website. But we should talk about some sort of compensation for that, right? For the first year or two, I almost never used an affiliate link. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know. They all felt icky to me, and that didn't line up with my brand. But when I started recommending products that I used and I trusted, it became a revenue stream, right? And so my influence had value. And people started emailing me asking, hey, Chris, you've used our product. Would you give me a quote? And I'm like, sure. And I'd give them a quote, and it would show up on their homepage. And I'm like, why is my quote on their homepage? And they're like, because your brand has a lot of value, and if you're saying something nice about us, we want to post it. Even when I wrote a review about a product that I said was crap, I wrote a review, and I'm like, this is not a great product. I do not recommend this product. But one sentence in the post was positive. Like, they did this right. They took that and put it on their website. Right? And so I got emails from people saying, hey, I saw that you really like this product. I'm like, I hate that product. They're like, well, they have you quote on their home. So I went to look at their quote, and I'm like, did I say that? I go look at my blog post. Yes, one sentence in a whole lot. And I'm like, oh, those guys are tricky, right? But it's because your brand and influence have value. And ultimately what happens is your site has value. Right? Because of that brand, because of that influence, I have folks who say, well, when I want to search looking for a plugin, those of you that know WordPress know that if you want to look for a plugin, you go to WordPress.org, go to plugins, and do a search there. They're like, no. I just go to your website and hit search and look there. Because if you're not recommending it, if you haven't written about it, then I don't want to touch it. You go, okay. Wow. I didn't expect that, but that's great. Lastly, vision. You develop a vision for yourself and what you could do and how it could work that before writing regularly, you never would have had. Ultimately, about 3.5 years ago, I started using affiliate links, and 2 years ago, the revenue stream started getting pretty good. And 6 months ago, when I was done with my professional services job, and I was tired and I wanted to break, I quit. I had to tell my father I was quitting my job. I don't know if you've ever told your father you're quitting a job, but the first question is, what's the new gig? And I said, nothing. He said, what do you mean, nothing? So, well, there's enough revenue coming in from my blog that I'm just going to take a few months off and just relax. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that every day at 5 o'clock I go get in a hot tub and smoke a cigar. Right? Cigars paid for by ChrisSummer.com, the blog. You're like, this is crazy. Also, the rent is paid that way, or the housing payment. You're like, this is crazy. There's revenue coming from a blog that has value, but also it gives you a different level of freedom and choice. Like, I could choose any job I want because the blog's generating enough revenue that I have choices now. I have choices, and I can pick where I want to go. I was going to end by telling you this main point, the only point that matters. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Whether it's me or anybody else, compare where you were to where you are today. Because if you're writing more, if the traffic's coming in more, if you're having more influence than you did at the beginning, you're in a much better spot, right? I was also going to recommend a little booklet that I put in the back. It's a little open booklet, notebook, and it's a great place where I would write down all the different topics as I heard people talking in conversation about problems they had. Every time someone has a problem, that's a great topic for a post, right? Because you know they're going to go look for that problem, they're going to look online, and so I would write all the topics down. And I would also ask myself several different questions, which you'll see at the bottom of that page, right? Different versions of questions that help me understand what I'm going to write about. And I also had defined every single day, what are the 3 things I got to get done for the day so I could get work done. And so if I knew those 3 were done, then I could go write my blog post. And I was going to recommend that you go to the back and get them. But some of you walked in, you went to the back table, you found it, you grabbed it, you didn't even know what it was. And you're like, here, I'll just take it. So now I think they're all gone. So if you're writing every day and you have one, I think you'll find it quite useful. If you are writing every day and you don't have, or writing regularly and you don't have one, find someone who grabbed it just cause, and then they realize, oh, I'm not going to use this, and ask to take one of theirs home. Because I only brought 80 or 90 of them, and I think they're all gone. With that, I'll wrap up and say my name's Chris Summer. You can find me blogging over at ChrisSummer.com. You can find me on Twitter at ChrisSummer, and I think we're going to open it up now for Q&A. Thank you.
I was given a tip in last year's work in blogging to include other people's names and businesses to emphasize something. And I had a very good experience. I got picked up on my blog by a company I was mentioning, and they reposted 50 times.
Yeah.
That same post. And I didn't know what to do with that once I started getting responses. Where do you take that when you do get it? How do you take off with that?
Yeah, so the advice he got was when you're writing a post and you're talking about someone else, reference a specific company, right? Link back to them, reference them, what have you. Because if they catch it, right, like they'll go and open up their stuff and go, who's this person who's linking to us? And they'll go read the article and go, oh, this is a great article. And then they will push it out. And that will bring you more traffic, but also bring you more contacts, leads, or something else. And so where do you go from there? Fundamentally, you do more of it, not just with that one company, but with others. But also, you have to figure out, okay, what then is your relationship with that company if you're going to send them traffic, right? If you're going to send people traffic and they're making a deal over there, and it all depends on what you're sending traffic to, but if you're sending them traffic and they're generating revenue, often you can go back and negotiate a deal that says, if the traffic comes from my site and they close on yours, what kind of compensation can I get for those leads, right? Because you're shortening their cost of sale, right? Someone who trusts you goes to them and buys, and they don't have to do a lot of work on their end. That's worth something.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah?
Back in the day when you were first getting started, what did you depend on for pushing everything out? Was it just SEO?
So the question is, when I was first starting, what did I use to get all the content out into the world? So, yes, SEO, but I want to be very clear. I don't know anything about SEO. So I leverage SEO without knowing anything about it. And what that means is I write for people, right? Over time, Google has become better and better at distinguishing between articles that are written for a machine and articles that are written for people. Their job is to find the best resources for people asking questions. And so I would write my titles and write my headlines in the post in ways that made it very clear to a person, this is easy to consume and this is their answer. And I didn't try and write those posts that have like 45 tips. I wrote those posts that had one tip, because tomorrow I'll write tip 2 and the day after tip 3. But each of those had a nuanced question, which meant Google could find and track all of those. I also use Twitter and Facebook. Facebook groups is a very interesting dynamic, because you get a mob of people who are all together, and they're all asking each other a question, and they don't necessarily know the answer. And so you write the post, right? It feels cheating, because you read the group and you read the question, and you read the discussion, and you go, oh, I know the answer to this. And you go and you write the whole post, and you go, oh, hey, guys, you may want to look at this. And you give them the link. And then they all flood over there, and then they're like, oh, my God, this is great. And then they share it with everybody else, and you're like, that's awesome. It's my trick just to you. Yeah.
I have a personal blog that's just like my books, and I write. I'm getting ready to launch my company blog.
Yeah.
And I'm having a struggle between my voice and the company, because I don't want to be company. I want to be me providing solutions.
Yeah.
Where is the fine line here?
Yeah. So the question is, she has a personal blog. Now she's going to get ready to spin up the corporate blog, but she doesn't want the corporate blog to sound corporate-y, but she doesn't want, she's unsure if it's going to sound too personally, and so how do you navigate that line between? I don't navigate the line. I write as me on the corporate side and as me in the personal side, because fundamentally other people want to hear a human. They don't want to hear an article written by a bot, right? And in these days we're seeing more and more bots and less people. So leverage that. Write like a human being. Now, you may want to take some of the saucy language out and anything else, right? And but write like a human being, and write as an opinionated person. Nobody has to agree with everything I write, right? But they surely don't want me to write, well, I can see the issue from all three sides. Like, well, what am I doing here, right? I wanted to get your perspective, so give them a perspective. Most of my posts are opinionated, right? And in the early years I would write, these are my opinions. I'm like, duh, it's my website. Of course they're my opinions. So I stopped writing that and just said, here's my take. You can disagree, but here's my take. Even on a corporate blog, I'd be opinionated. Other questions? Yeah.
I come from a part of the States where there's like all these agencies that basically you pay them to maintain it with the bloggers that when you submit your product, these bloggers go and write about it. So my question is twofold. Like, one, what do you think about that, which is very related to affiliates and affiliate links? Two, like, I see that as a problem, and it actually expresses itself inside of the technical and technology culture in general. And so I want to write about that, but that's negative, right? So is it worth writing about and critiquing?
Okay, so that was a question in 62 parts. But the core of it is there are agencies that will assemble a whole bunch of bloggers ready for any product launch, and then they'll give the product information to them and have all of them write about it. And what's my take on it? And also, he has a particular take on it, which is negative, and should he write about it, given that it's a negative take? So, first of all, you're welcome to have your opinion, and if it's negative, you're welcome to write it. Again, if you feel like if it meets a standard of this is a public good for me to write a negative post, that's my bar. It doesn't have to be yours, but that's my bar. So I've written 6 negative posts, right? If any of you use Divi, how many of you like Divi? You use Divi, right? So I hate Divi. And I think you will all hate it eventually. I think it's just a matter of time before you come back to me and say, Chris, you were right. So that's one of my 6 posts, right? And I wrote, if you like Divi, you better marry it, because you can never leave it again, right? And it's the most viewed post about Divi on the internet, right? I know this because every person who goes to the Divi pre-sales channel links back to it, right? And I got really smart. I actually said, if you like Divi, and the Divi link is an affiliate link, so even when people are coming to read my negative posts, if they decide they disagree with me and they click on the Divi link and they go buy it, I still get paid. I don't care. But my bar is here in terms of it has to be, to write negative, it has to be a public service for me. And it has to be a qualified lead. The second question is, how do I feel about, it's an artificial dynamic where 50 people all write about a launch. It's not just with those agencies. Tons of product launch people do this. It used to be that there was a funnel and a time-sensitive offer. These days, it's all about generating revenue from product launches. And product launches mean you need, 50 other people to get together and write about it as well. They all end up sounding the same. The articles are all very similar. And unfortunately, if you're subscribed to 2 or 3 of these people, you get the same article in your inbox like within minutes, right? Where all 3 have done it. It creates for me a backlash where I go, I'm not buying that product because I don't believe any of what you said because you guys are all part of a machine to produce a launch. But those launches make money, and it's what I tell my children, right? The world is filled with stupid people, and I just don't want you to be one of them, right? Those people still buy those launches, right? And so there's going to be people out there. And so if that's a strategy for you to make money, great. It's not a strategy I use. And if I felt really strongly about it, I would write about it. I don't feel strongly enough in my world, so I don't. But I would if I did.
I think this is important to me. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing knowledge. I appreciate that. If you want to share 5 major areas of finance, will you create one main blog with some kind of name at the top, or one blog separate?
So the question is, if you were writing in finance, would you create one finance blog with lots of different topics, or would you create different finance blogs? I would create one finance blog with lots of different topics. And if you come to chrissummit.com, you'll realize I write about WordPress a lot, but I also write about public speaking, and I also write about product development, although less. And that wasn't because I thought that the right nexus of people were going to be people who were WordPress people plus public speakers plus doing product development. It was because I didn't want to get bored, right? I wanted to write one site. Now, I will tell you, some people will say that my strategy was a mistake because Google only really counts my site as being WordPress because that's mostly what I write about. They don't really send a lot of traffic my way for public speaking, and so they might think of it as a mistake. Other people think it's a mistake because I can't sell my blog without going with it, right? I can't sell chrissummit.com because I have to go with it. Though I did find a guy who wanted to pay me a lot of money and not go with it, right? And I was like, that's interesting, but no. Because I'm selling you my name, right? What do I have left? But it is a suggestion, right? You may not want to name it your name if you want an exit plan, right? So in a financial space, you may want something different. I think there's a last one, yeah?
I always wanted to write, and it was not until like a month and a half that I got myself similarly fast to writing every day. I was between trying to write a book and And then the most practical way for me to do it, to push myself to do it, was to write every day and just write smaller posts. And so far it's been quite an interesting experience because I thought I wanted to write a book, but the more I'm writing blog posts, the more I'm realizing, is it really a book? You know, these days it's really kind of, people consume content different ways. You know, people just want to go Google something, find, read whatever they want, and then be done with it. They're not, you're not going to expect them to read a whole book. So I'm kind of having thoughts about should I really turn this into a book? Because I see value in finding content in different other ways. It's like you click on a category, yes, it's like an archive category could be like a book that gets generated on the fly.
So the core of the question is, should you still write a book or should you write a blog? And the answer is both, right? Use one for the other. So one of the books I wrote was on high performers, and I just wrote, I would publish that post every other day, so the other days would be other things, but I wrote chapters as posts. And then you'd get feedback from people in the comments, and I would adjust those chapters, then you assemble it all, publish it as a book. And nobody said, hey, I read this book already as blog posts on your website. Because people who buy books don't read the blog, people who read the blog don't buy books, and some people, although none of you, buy books and don't read them. Right? In which case, you definitely just get the revenue and no downside. All right. My name's Chris Sama. Thank you very much.